Thank you. Welcome to All About LinkedIn. The 3 E's, how LinkedIn can power your career shift. You might be thinking, oh God, I suppose I better do LinkedIn, or you might be skipping in here. I love LinkedIn. Oh, I bet, who loves LinkedIn? You're in the minority. So for some of you, you might be sitting there thinking it's a necessary evil, or I'm curious about how it might happen. And that's why I hope this session will be really useful to you. So the 3 E's, how LinkedIn can power your career shift. So let me just first of all say hello. My name is Rachel Schofield. I am a qualified personal development and career coach. So I work with a lot of people in this space. I have written a book which is published by Penguin, called The Career Change Guide, 5 Steps to Finding Your Dream Job. I meant to ask, Kate might know the answer to this. Sorry, I keep thinking Kate's trying to work over. Is that on sale here today?
What, sorry,
I did. Oh, thank you. No, there we are. I didn't. You're not a plant, are you, madam? No. £20 later. Yeah. So that's the book I wrote for Penguin a couple of years ago, which you're welcome to go and have a look at and get your hands on if that's helpful to you. But the important thing to say as well is I am a career changer. So I spent 20 years at the BBC. I was a reporter and presenter and made my own shift retraining as a coach. And I also have a slight obsession with LinkedIn, probably because it meets both my worlds, which is something we're often looking for in career change. So it speaks to careers, which I love because I'm a career coach, but it also has a lot to do with communication, presentation, impact, personal brand, which also interests me as a journalist and someone whose first role was very much in the world of communications. And I have created a course called Shine on LinkedIn. And what you're going to hear today, the elements of that, but I hope are particularly pertinent to career changes, because I realized that LinkedIn is an odd space if you're a career changer. It throws up some potentially more complicated things to navigate. There's all sorts of issues that perhaps are more tricky if you're thinking about a change and if you're just kind of sitting there saying, I'm an accountant and I work in that. So we'll talk about that. So I wonder how you feel about LinkedIn. We got the sense that lots of you don't love it, probably because you might think of it in some of these ways. You think, well, it's just somewhere that I kind of go if I'm looking for jobs. And if you were here in Richard's session, and I work with Richard, I do some stuff with career shifters, often just sitting looking at jobs as a career shifter is not that helpful because you're trying to do something different or you're somebody who doesn't quite fit the mold. You might be someone who thinks of it as it's just somewhere I sit and write down all the stuff I've done. It's like my CV, which again, if you're looking to do something different, is not hugely helpful to you. Or the other one that people feel very funny about is I don't like selling myself. This feels all a bit, watch my language here, it all just feels a bit word that begins with W and ends in key. It just feels like a bit of a brag fest. So you might feel about it like that. But what I hope by the end of the session today is that you will see it in some different ways and have some different uses for you at whatever stage you're at. So for example, one of the things you will really need to lean into is the idea that Google is often where you spend a lot of time as a career changer. I shall just Google that. Always a mistake because you end up just thinking, as Richard Alderson said at Career Shifters, trying to think your way forward. Just if I get enough data, the magic answer will appear. Whereas LinkedIn is a real life search engine. It generates people you can speak to. It generates a world that you can actually step into and have access to. It's a great place to start conversations with people, which is so valuable when you are a career shifter. It's a place to start building new relationships and expanding your network. Finding ultimately possibly opportunities, because as Richard was saying, and all of you are in the session, you should have been really good. Opportunities come attached to people more likely than not. They don't sort of float around ready for you to catch with a giant butterfly net. So if you build the kind of people in your network, you're more likely to come across interesting opportunities. And equally, it's not somewhere to hang your CV. And I think this is what sometimes people feel very constrained about by LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is trying to make it simple for you. It has a structure. And if you only play by the LinkedIn structure that it offers you, you can sort of feel like, oh, I have to put in my experience of, right, yes, it's told me to put in my experience. I must put in everything I've ever done without stopping to think, well, what of this is relevant to what I want to do now? And I am allowed to leave stuff out. I am allowed to position this slightly differently. It doesn't have to look like my CV from 10 years ago. I think people don't realize that it can be what you want it to be. And by that, I mean, it can be a really powerful mini website so that you can start to tell your new story as you emerge into the world. So That's what I hope you will go away leaving. And I'm going to walk you through a process. I would say to you, for those who came in late, if you want to, if you don't find it wildly distracting, if you have LinkedIn on your phone in the app, you're welcome to have that open, because I will be looking at something. It's not going to kind of live workshop anything, but I will be referring to things. And sometimes people are like, oh, can I do that on mine? I'm not sure where that is. So you're welcome to play. And of course, a few of the slides that I share, because they come linked to my course, which is full of stuff, some of my slides are quite busy. You're welcome to photograph them. I've got noticed, sometimes people who think they're trying to like photograph. You are absolutely allowed to photograph the slides if that's helpful to you. So if you need to stick it up and capture something, and there may be the odd one where I invite you to do it because it's stuff that you can take away. So the 3 E's. I want to take you through a process essentially. You'll need to, as I go through it, listen to kind of where are you, what do you need. Some people will be kind of working on all 3 of these things at once. For others of you, it's a very linear process, and I've designed it as a kind of 3 stages to go through in LinkedIn, but it will depend whether you are on your lanyard, an explorer, a browser, a pathfinder. You'll know kind of which bits you've already done, which bits are going to be most useful, which bits you can kind of park for now and not worry about. But I hope it provides you with an outline that will be useful. So these are the 3 stages that I'd invite you to consider when you are using LinkedIn. And I'm sorry, am I right in your way, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Just nudge me if you need me to kind of move forward. So it takes you through 3 stages: explore, engage, emerge. And they have different outcomes and different reasons to go through them. They move you essentially on a spectrum. When you're just exploring, and I'll talk you through how you do each of these things, you're probably quite under the radar, which for a lot of career changes at the early stage of things feels like quite a safe and helpful place to be, because you're not quite ready to tell the world what you're doing. You maybe have got all those kind of hang-ups of like, oh, what people say, what will my colleagues think if I put that on my LinkedIn? So maybe you want to stay under the radar. Maybe you're not feeling that confident yet about sort of announcing to the world what you're doing. And maybe you're not that sure of what you're doing, so you're not ready to kind of go forth and tell everybody. But as you move through this process, it will get you to the emerge stage, which may be months down the line. It might even be a year or 18 months down the line. But where you feel confident, I'm ready to be on the radar, I feel much more confident, and I have real clarity about what I'm trying to say. And of course, these stages, as with anything, they're not sort of necessarily like you finish one and then you start the next. They may blend, you may move back and forth, you may have all 3 going on at once. But essentially, the first stage, explore, is all about gathering information and insights and inspiration, but in such a way that you're emerging into a world. You're not just collecting stuff like you might be if you were Googling. You're actually doing all of those things within an actual ecosystem where there are real people. Engaging is much more about creating this new network, because for most of us, even for those of you who end up making a career shift that isn't a radical departure, you are going to need new people in your world. You are going to be making enough of a shift that probably the people who you already are connected with, some of them will continue to be valuable and great connections, but you're going to need some new folks as well. And then as you emerge, it's all about sharing this new you. Take the word brand and use it if you like. Some people find the kind of idea of a personal brand really naff and they don't like it. Call it whatever you want, but I think you know what I mean. And it will help you attract the work you want. So we'll lean in. But the first thing I want to say, here's some practical stuff, first of all. Some people say to me, I want to kind of go and do stuff on LinkedIn, but I'm worried people will see me doing it. and that's fair enough, actually. I mean, sometimes it's helpful, but a lot of time people initially are like, I don't necessarily want people to see that I've changed stuff or that I'm beavering around and putting new stuff on. So a few pointers for you, first of all. You can check this live with me, but if that slows you down or you end up with 65 questions for me, just take a photo because I don't want to lose too much time. But one of the things to do, and I'll talk you through the journey here, but is to make sure, I would suggest to you, that you are in private mode. This is because one of the things you might do quite a lot of on LinkedIn is go nosing around in a kind of gentle, non-stalkery kind of way, other people's profiles. And sometimes you're like, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do I look at other people's stuff without them seeing that I've looked at it? That's a fair question. Yeah. Like, I want to go and look, but I don't want people to go, Sarah has looked up. I'm trying to be subtle. So the place to go to check this, and you may find you're already in private mode, but if you get into your settings, so top picture, into your settings, you find visibility, and then you get a choice, and the 2 pictures at the bottom are give you a sense of your choices. So you can select as you've got their private mode on the left-hand side, which means that when you go searching for someone and they see that you've looked at the profile, all it will tell them is an anonymous LinkedIn member has looked at your profile. Sometimes, so it might be that you want to set that to private mode and it would then display as private mode in your visibility. I would just challenge you to say, if you're more in the, if you're in the emerging bit, if you're at stage 3 and you're in private mode, you might want to actually think, I want to take that. Because if you're anything like me, when I see someone's looked at my profile and I can see their name and where they work, because I'm nosy, I'll be like, who's that? So I will click on their profile and go, I've been looking at my stuff. And sometimes it's someone really interesting and you think, oh, that's nice, they're taking interest, I quite like what they do. So there is a case that when you get to the point where you're actually trying to build your network, come to connect with people, there's no harm in people seeing that you've looked, because it might make them more ready to know that you'd probably like to ask to connect with them, or they just will go and have a look and sort of you get into their world. So do you want to be in private mode or not, depending on where you are at? The other thing that I would suggest you do, because you're likely to be making quite a lot of changes, have you ever had notifications on LinkedIn where it says, John has moved job or such and such? And that's great if John has moved job or you've moved job. But what it tends to do is if you make any changes to your experience section, it might well notify all the people in your network. And actually all you're doing is sort of rewriting it or trying to delete something. And you don't necessarily want everyone to go, oh, I wonder what John is doing. Let me go and look. So what you can make sure you do is that you go into your visibility again. So on that, you go down in your settings to the visibility and you make sure that share, job changes, education changes and work anniversaries and profile is off. Because that allows you to edit to your heart's content without anybody getting a wild notification that you've been doing things. On which note, again, you might be someone who's really experienced with LinkedIn. You're going to be doing a lot of rewriting of your LinkedIn. So on your experience section or your about section, even your headline. I would always work in Word and not do it live in the app. Because there's nothing more annoying than it sort of times out or you suddenly think, oh, I quite like the last version better, and you haven't got it. So I would always, if you're making big edits, as you might do as a result of this session, do it in Word, and then when it's ready, you can kind of move it over. And I would also suggest you maybe kind of cut and paste what you've got at the moment so that you've got a record of it, if that's helpful. And final thing, again, which sort of talks about, are you someone who wants the world to know? Which stage are you at? Just highlighting to you that there is an option on LinkedIn, I'm sure many of you know about this, to show that you are open to work. This induces really strong reactions in people. You're either a green banner person or you're not. So some of you, it might be that you just feel like, I kind of don't want it. I don't mind, people know that I'm looking for work, but I sort of don't necessarily want it revealed to the world with a big green banner because I feel funny about it. For some of you, it might be like, it would be sort of catastrophic if people knew I was open to work because my boss might have a view about that. So just letting you know, in case you think, well, it's a green banner or nothing, you do have options. So you can let the world of recruiters, and we've talked about recruiters a little bit, sometimes recruiters aren't helpful to you, but if there are people who are looking to recruit, there is a way to let them know that you're interested in work without having a green banner, which is simply that when you click on your photo, you'll get a thing that says open to. It might even already be there. There's a thing that says open to. You can say that you're open to finding a new job there, and you can fill in some details. You can put into kind of job titles and things. But at the bottom there, that's the important bit. You get to choose by checking that circle or not, whether recruiters only can see that. That is, when I say recruiters, I don't mean people who just call themselves recruiters. These are people who have to have a specific recruitment LinkedIn. They might have to be hiring managers, people who kind of need to have certain functionality in LinkedIn. But they will be able to see that you've indicated that you're open to work. And the green banner will not appear. If you want the whole world to know, then the green banner can come on. Yes, madam.
Would that include the recruiter from your own company?
It could well do. Yeah. So yes, yeah. It's basically anybody who's paying for the kind of recruitment service. So worth thinking about, yeah. And not everybody uses it, and it depends how big your company is and what their budget is. Some people, you know, if they've got a big in-house budget, they would all have this. Some people don't use it at all. But yeah. Good question. So there we are. That was just a bit of background to check your settings before you go meddling. You might, sometimes it worries people. So there you're all set. So explore. So this is all about using the LinkedIn search function, which I think is often an underused function. The great thing about this as well, if you start here and you're not someone who's very familiar with LinkedIn, it's a good way to really learn to navigate LinkedIn and find your way around. So it's all about getting information, getting insights, getting inspiration. So I often invite people to go and have a play. And I would say this to you when you go away today. So think about what your starting point is in that search bar at the top of LinkedIn. I call them your spark words. They can be lots of different things. If you look at the pink ones, those are obviously job titles. Some people have the clarity that they know what kind of job they're looking for, but often it's maybe in the purple, your spark word, you found your spark, it gives you energy. It's a kind of sector or an interest, heritage, fashion. It might be in the orange, for the sake of kind of giving these a theme, a skill set or something you think I'd like to do in terms of an activity or something you would kind of someone would watch you doing. It might be a place, either a general place like a museum or a bakery. I just would like to work in a zoo. It might be a specific place like the Royal Geographical Society, or it might be along the end there. I was going to say a passion. Bereavement probably shouldn't really sound like a passion, should it? But it might be a sort of a topic, an interest that you just feel like, oh, I've always had something that really engages me with that. So your spark words, have a play and take them to the search button. At the top, you see I've put in sound engineer, because people often think you're only looking for jobs in this book. But actually, as you go along that yellow highlighted bit, you can have a play. You can search up whatever your spark word is, whether it's a job that somebody might have, or it's just an interest of yours or a particular skill. And you can look for the people that are generated by that. Simply because, why are you doing this? Well, several different reasons. You might want to think about, how did they get to do this? What did they study? What do they do? Where have they worked? Because I love the idea of being a sound engineer, but I don't know where you do that. And you can go, no, I did this one. And I think, actually, it's not Kimberly, one of those folks was the sound engineer at Peloton. Who knew? I thought, oh, so that makes sense that Peloton, you know, the bikes, they have to do all these tracks and they would have a sound engineer. But I thought, that's kind of cool. If you were someone who was into fitness and quite like sound engineering, you might think, I would never have thought that. So things like that. So, and again, I'm not going to run through all, but take a photo if it's helpful, because what you do is you get that person's profile up and you just go nosing around to think of like, well, what do people, because obviously sound engineer, you're like, well, sound engineer is a sound engineer. But sometimes you've got as your starting point a job title, and you don't realize that there are 6 or 7 different ways of saying that. Like people who work in HR, they used to just be HR managers. Now they might be people leaders, they might be talent partners, all those kind of things. Sometimes you just think, okay, I didn't even know this whole new jargon. Let me capture all those things. And then I can start looking at what those people do. Thinking about what they've written about themselves, how they describe it, what journey they took, you know, what newsletters are they following, all those kind of things. And thinking about what are they posting about, what are they sharing. So going looking for people can be really helpful. At this stage, all I'm asking you to do, because you're just in the explore phase, is to just go and have a little look. Make a note, kind of think about this person is interesting, and maybe find several people and think, oh, what am I seeing as the common themes in this world or this industry? And then I would encourage you, with your spark words, to go and look at other things as well. So go and look at the posts, because that will give you a real feel for what are the discussions going on in this industry at the moment. You know, what are people talking about? What are the big challenges in this new world that I'm interested in? What are the things that people disagree on? What are the resources that people are sharing? So you can search under posts. Yes, you can search under jobs, but I would hold that lightly, not because you're necessarily looking for a job at the moment, but because it will give you a feel for what kind of requirements people are looking for, where there are things happening, what the salaries are. It's information. Companies, if you look for, say you put in heritage. Now, if I off the top of my head had to think, and I like heritage, I'm a big person for going to look at castles, I'd come up with like English Heritage National Trust and the Scottish and Welsh versions thereof. But of course, if you put in heritage and you put in companies, it'll throw up all kinds of much smaller, more niche organizations connected to heritage that you probably would never have heard of. So again, it's just kind of really useful information. Wouldn't worry necessarily about courses, schools, but the other two that I would say have a look at: groups. If you're not a member of any LinkedIn groups, take a look. If someone's starting out. So I, for example, am a member of several groups on LinkedIn, one of which is around learning and development professionals. And these are almost like Facebook groups. Some are more active than others. But again, a lovely place if you can join a group like that to start asking questions. People are friendly. If they've joined a group, they like the idea of community and conversations. They could be useful to you. And events can be helpful as well. You look up, you know, heritage and you put in event, you'll find out someone's got a book launch. Maybe I'll go along to that. In the spirit of what Richard Alderson was saying about, don't just try and think your way forward, act it out, go to things, meet people, see if there's a conference, see if there's some kind of lecture or an evening with or whatever it might be. So that stage of exploring can be really useful. Do not get stuck there. So that's a really useful place to go, taking your sparks and growing them, turning them into flames and more of a fire. But at that point, you need to start actually kind of dipping a toe. So stage 2 is engage, which is about building your network. So I would say there's a kind of process you can go through. Again, I offer this to you, hold it lightly, see how it lands. You might be like, I don't have to do those first bits. I'm straight in, connecting with everybody. I'm cool with that. But for a lot of people, it's about building up your confidence and building up the ability to reach out to people, because your ultimate aim here is to get new people into your world. So that you can learn more, you can have conversations, you can find out about opportunities. But naturally, most of us don't want to just send cold DMs to people or start scattergun connecting with people. We know what it's like if you get them. You're just like, who's this random weirdo who say they want to connect? They haven't sent me a message, that they're making me work really hard to figure out why they want to connect with me. No, connection request denied. So I would suggest to you that there are sort of 5 steps loosely that you might want to work through. If you're thinking, oh, I found some interesting people through your sparks, and I'll talk you through them. Follow, like, comment, connect, ask. So the obvious one is to follow people. So when you've done your sparks work and you're like, this person's interesting, and they're quite active, obviously not much point following people who don't ever post anything and do anything. So just, again, some of you, I'm sorry if this is like too basic, but you get the option to follow people. The weird thing on LinkedIn now that sometimes causes confusion is people can configure their profile slightly differently. It used to be that you were always just offered to connect. Follow, I guess, building on the Instagram and TikTok model and things, has come in more recent years. But it means you sometimes, when you look at somebody, get an option. Some people have got it set to follow. I think mine is set to follow. Other people, you can only see initially connect. And you think, I'm not quite ready to reach out and connect because I'm going to look like the random weirdo. If you go into more, generally speaking, in LinkedIn, if you go into more, you get a drop down. So Abby here, these are random people, by the way, real people. Abby, I'm like, oh, she looks really great. I'm interested in M&S and food, but I don't know if I can connect with her yet because she won't know who I am. So I'm just going to follow her first. So go into more, and then you get the option to follow first. The other thing you can do, if you find someone who's really interesting, you think, I want to kind of build up a relationship with this person, I want to start seeing their posts regularly in my feed, you can ring the bell. If you've seen that on the top of people's profiles, so every time that person posts, it will notify you. So you can start to really curate your feed, because that's the other thing that can be quite difficult when you first start entering a new world, is your blooming LinkedIn algorithm, of course, thinks you work in, account management, and it keeps sending you loads of stuff about that. And you're like, I'm trying to escape. Stop sending me this. I want to hear about marine biology. But of course, unless you tell it that by saying, I'm not interested in this stuff, oh, I'm ringing the bell on every single marine biologist that I've found, then it will start to give you stuff that you're interested in. That takes a while. Don't be disheartened. If you're someone who's not been that active on LinkedIn, you will find that you're immersed for quite a while in your existing world. Don't lose heart. Teach LinkedIn what you want to see. What else do you need to do when you are making the second stage and engaging? Of course, if you find any groups, join them. Sometimes you have to kind of go through a little bit of a process and maybe fill something in about why you'd like to join. When I say fill something in online, it's not a huge big application process, but get involved. So if you're someone who thought, actually, I've always thought I'd like to work in psychology in an executive way, then look, here we are, 81,000 people in this group. I don't know how active it is, but if you've joined it and started to say, oh, I'm just exploring this and I'm keen to talk to psychologists who work with executives, would anyone be prepared to chat to me? And they probably will. We'll get to that stage. So join your groups. And similarly, no offense to Ed, who I know well, but if you're starting to see a lot of posts in your feed that are all about your old world, and you're like, oh, it's still showing me everything about dog training and I want to be another dog in my life, you can click on the 3 dots and start to tell it, I'm not interested in this stuff. Obviously, Ed doesn't get a message saying Rachel is not interested in your stuff. It's just for the algorithm. So again, curate your feed a little bit. So that was the first stage, follow people. Start to like their stuff. Again, for those of you who are great LinkedIn folks, sorry if this is a bit basic, but as well as just saying like, if you hover over the like, you get more options. I think it's not, you get notified if people like your stuff. So if you like someone's post, it might be, they might think, oh, who's this person liking my post? But you can choose, you can celebrate their post, you can support it, you can love it with a heart, you can say it was funny. It's a minor thing, but I just think it's quite nice if you think, oh, Ishan thought your post was insightful. Like, oh, did he know? Who's Ishan? Maybe go and have a look at him. So a small thing. The next stage is if you can be brave enough, start to comment on people's stuff. Because remember, the whole idea here is that you're building new relationships, you're building up to a connection request, or maybe even reaching out to somebody. And rather than go cold, you can start to reach out. Now, I can see some of you photographing this. Delete that photo immediately. These are not the kind of comments you want to leave. These are because they don't say anything about you. Oh yeah, this is the most interesting thing I ever read. It's like a lot of bots do. So they're like, yay, thanks, amazing comment, totally agree, yeah, maybe. It doesn't really, it's not going to make, if someone keeps putting comments like that on my feed and then they reach out to me, I'm, oh yeah, it's nice, it's kind of flattering, but it's not that interesting. 3 types of comment, this is where you can take photos. 3 types of comment that can be really helpful is adding some value, sharing an opinion or an insight, and starting, if you feel comfortable, to talk about why, your own journey. I love this plate. I'm still building experience. I have been following such and such a person and learning about this. My background is this, but actually your post made me really realize there's a lot of overlap. Again, make these your own. You might think that's too wordy or that make me sound like an idiot, but you've got your own voice. But sharing a comment like this, someone's going to look at it. If someone leaves a comment like that on my post, they've spent some time thinking about it, I'll take an interest. If that person then reaches out to me to connect, I'll be like, oh, that was that person who said they're making a move out of, out of the corporate world and they want to learn about coaching. I might be more inclined to have a conversation with them. Second kind, you can ask questions. And again, but with a bit of context, if you're comfortable. I'm currently moving into graphic design. Found your post really helpful. What would you say? What would your advice be to me as someone who's just starting out, or what would you have done differently when you were building your business? Again, something people might ignore them, but it's a really nice quality comment. And thirdly, you might want to start to share little personal experiences or examples. This is building credibility with that person. Take the graphic design example. Someone shares a post about, here are 3 things you should never do in graphic design. You can say, oh gosh, this really resonated with me. I've just done my first semi-professional project. I definitely made mistake number 1, but I've learned to do it this way instead, or whatever. Just building your confidence, setting up some credibility. And at that point, and again, you can hold it how you like. There are some people I can connect with this person straight away. But at that point, you might want to reach out and connect. You can add a note, which is always nice to give people a bit of context. The only problem is, for most of us who don't have LinkedIn Premium, and I wouldn't necessarily pay for it, take the month's free trial, do a lot of your connection requests, because you get unlimited connection requests, I think, with Premium now. Otherwise, you only get 5 a month, which is quite annoying. So you will end up having to send some connection requests without a message. But of course, if you've done the legwork and you commented on people's posts and then you reach out to connect, they don't think, who is this random weirdo? They think, oh, that's that person I had that quite interesting conversation with in my comments. So there we are. Again, I'm keeping an eye on time because I know I'm going to run out of time. I always try to say too much. Things to do. Obviously, some of these people you're connecting with are from your sparks. So they might be new people, but don't forget to reach out to old people in your network. If you're someone who's not been on LinkedIn for a long time, reach out to people and say, be nice to connect because we've not seen each other for a long time. Again, you might think, why would I do that? These people are from my old world. But as Richard was saying earlier, people know other people. So just even reconnecting with other folks from your world who you went to uni with, who you play hockey with on a Saturday on LinkedIn can be useful. Make use of recommendations. If someone has said, oh, you should talk to my friend, then connect with them on LinkedIn. I work with the brilliant Aya. I gather you know everything about career moves out of law. I'm discreetly pondering an escape. She suggested you be a good person to connect with. Send a message like that. And similarly, again, I won't read these all out, but sometimes if you've been engaging with someone's content, that's the moment to reach out and say, I've been following your posts. I really enjoyed talking to you about such and such. Hope you're open to connecting. Sometimes you don't even have, sometimes it feels weird to say, would you be prepared to connect with me? If you've seen neither of those examples, I don't think say, will you connect with me? Oh, no one says reaching out to connect. But you don't have to sort of put it like that. You can just say, hello, I really enjoyed our conversation in the comments about whatever, and then just hit send. The problem here, you get 200 characters. You have to be very short and sweet. You can't send a whole nice essay at this point saying, I've been doing this and I'm doing that now. So there we are, some suggestions. And then this is where the scary bit comes. And again, it will be different for everybody. It might not be something you do straight away. But if you start to build a rapport with someone on LinkedIn, through the comments, through connecting with them, can you then ask for that conversation? These curious conversations or informational interviews where you think, can I just get 15 minutes with this person to talk to them? And I've got a few suggestions about how you do that. Sorry, again, you just have to take a photo of it because I'm going to move fast. Make this your own. You might feel like this is not how I would say it, of course. But once you've connected with somebody and you DM them, there's no limit to how long your message can be. It's only that first connection request that is very short. So once they've said yes and accept, you can send them a proper message, which gives them a bit of a sense of this is me, this is what I'm currently doing. Here's my background, what I'm looking at as I'm trying to learn more about this. Definitely, this is not, by the way, someone asking someone for a job or anything of a favor. It's just saying, could I have a 15-minute chat with you? Would you be open to that? I'd love to ask you some questions about your journey into whatever field it is. And, you know, you understand if your schedule's full, let me know if you'd be open to it. Either way, I'll continue to enjoy your posts and I'm glad we're connected. So there we are. The other thing you can do here is put out a post. And again, this will depend whether you're open, overtly or covertly letting people know that you're considering a shift. But you can put out a post. I don't know if you've ever seen these. I've seen them. Asking people for help. So who do you know? I'm asking my network, but this is a post. Who do you know, who works in building preservation, specifically in the northeast of England, whatever, you might know that since I turned 40 or since I was made redundant or whatever it is, I'm currently investigating some new pathways. One of them is all around heritage protection and old buildings. I'm looking to talk to people. If you know anyone, could you let me know? Who was in Richard's session? Okay, so Richard did an experiment. There was a gentleman who said, I'm quite interested in setting up a clothing business, but I don't know anyone. Richard said, who in this room knows somebody who has set up a clothing line or some kind of clothing business? I think about 6 hands went up, didn't they? This is the equivalent of doing that, is that you might not know the person that you need, but someone in your network might do. You say, I'm interested in, packaging design. I'm interested in working in the hospitality industry. And you're thinking, I don't know anybody, but your network might do. I appreciate this is a stretch for some people and that some people it would not be appropriate because you're trying to go under the radar. The other way to do that in this case, I haven't put it in, but is, no, wrong way. The other way you can do this is get a mate to do it for you. Similar post, you just find someone who you know is like massively connected on LinkedIn and just say, could you put up a post that says, hi everybody, I've got a friend who is looking to find out more about becoming I'm really struggling with jobs today. I don't know why. I think it's my perimenopausal brain. I work with people in career change and all I can think of is graphic designers and dog walkers today. I've got a friend who is interested in working in the finance world and particularly sustainability. Does anybody have anybody they know who works in this field who'd be happy to have it? If so, DM me or docs you, and then they can pass those people on to you. Because I realise sometimes it's not. Okay. So follow, like, comment, connect, ask. It's about building a relationship. Take that, use it as you like. You might be like, I don't need to do some of those stages. I'm just going to go straight in, particularly with just reconnecting with old folks in your network who might be interesting to have conversations with. You don't necessarily need to do all the preamble. But think about, as you go away today, who can I go and start to connect with? Where are my sparks? How can I start to generate and train LinkedIn to take me into my new world? And finally, you're aiming eventually to get to that point where you are emerging, sharing your new brand. And that will again look very different for everybody. I've got so many slides to this and I realize I'm massively running out of time. So I may have to skip some of them. But what do I want to invite you to think about? I would say, if you've worked with LinkedIn a lot, you might know this. But for me, there are 6 areas of your profile that I would focus on. Again, LinkedIn keeps trying to get you to fill in extra bits. What are your services? And you're like, I don't have any services. What are your volunteering things? And you're like, I better put in that I volunteer teaching small children to speak German. And you're like, why am I saying this? This has got nothing to do with anything I'm trying to achieve. So be discerning. My point being, it will keep trying to get you to fill stuff in. You don't have to fill in everything it wants you to. Always ask yourself, is this relevant? Is this helpful to what I'm trying to achieve? So to me, the key bit, of course, is that introduction section. Your name, your headline, your photo, your banner, we'll talk about that. Your about section, that's going to be massive. And then gradually going down your experience, making this relevant, we'll talk about that. Your education kind of goes without saying, your skills, and possibly, again, tricky for some people, but recommendations that are relevant to what you want to be doing next. So I'll give you a whistle-stop tour with some thoughts about this. So just a thought, I'm really mindful, how many people, because I've been talking about this, how many people do feel that they have to be a bit on the down low about this career shift that they're planning? Is there anyone who, yeah, okay, yeah. So, okay, that's good. So not too many, but I do appreciate some people are in that kind of covert stage, which is why I'm just give you a couple of pointers of people who are there and aren't able to kind of start putting stuff out straight away, which is sometimes you're just trying to subliminally move away from what you currently do. This is my profile at the moment, needs actually updating a little bit. But a couple of thoughts for those of you who need to be a little bit covert. Maybe you want to start distancing yourself from what you currently do. So for example, LinkedIn makes you think that you have to have your current company at the top. Mine says Rework Your Life because that's my business name. But that doesn't have to be there, neither does my university, actually. There's a lot of boxes if you go looking that you can uncheck. So if you don't want it to be the first thing that people see that you work at Sainsbury's, and you're like trying to I don't want people to keep thinking I'm in retail because I'm trying to become a graphic designer. You can kind of get rid of that. Or you can choose to actually put in, your hobby as a graphic designer or your graphic design course, even though you're not going full guns blazing on it yet. You can start to sort of send a bit of subliminal messaging. And similarly, and actually this is useful for everybody, in this section, you get to choose your industry. And because we're all very compliant, and we're like, I'd be asked for my industry. I am an accountant. I should put in accountancy, even though I want to become someone who works in healthcare. Don't put in accountancy. This doesn't appear anywhere. Nobody sees this. So if you put in the area that you are interested in, your shift industry, that will, again, it's about helping the algorithm know what you want to see. So to suggest you all go, if you know kind of you've got one thing you're interested in, go and change that because nobody sees it. So it's just for the background for LinkedIn. So if you need to be a little bit covert. If you want someone who's been quite overt and you're thinking, how else can I kind of get out there in the world on LinkedIn? If someone who quite likes posting or you want to experiment with it, then I would encourage you to think about, you might actually want to take people on this journey with you. It's done really effectively. I don't know if she would mind me saying that. Charlotte, are you in here? So Charlotte is somebody I know who became a coach. And she was very happy for the world to know that. She doesn't find people see. And she actually almost charted her journey on LinkedIn through her training, through her client work. So that by the time she was ready to be a coach and look for paying clients, she wasn't then suddenly coming out of nowhere with people going, Charlotte's a coach now? When did that happen? Sometimes just starting to drop in posts and let people know, a post about after 20 years in banking, I've decided I need to get into the great outdoors. I'm starting my journey to train as a forest ranger. True story, someone I work with. You might share posts about what you're learning. Say you're doing your psychotherapy course, rather than just sort of sit on that, maybe you share some posts. This is all about building credibility, getting people used to what you do, starting to potentially find clients, so that when you're ready to launch, whatever it is, people aren't going, oh, that's a thing, where did that come from? Similarly, you might sort of engage with experts and thought leaders through your posts. Oh, you might repost someone's, I read this post, thought it was really interesting, here's why. You might share the fact that you've just qualified with a particular new piece of training, or you've just sort of had a really great client, whatever it is. And you might talk about skills. When I spent 20 years in teaching, listening was one of the greatest skills. I'm finding it's a massive help in my new role as a coach, whatever it might be. So some kind of way you can overtly take people with you on a journey, if that feels useful, because it saves that sudden moment of thinking, today is the day when I tell everybody I'm doing this. And that feels kind of scary. So all I would say, a few pointers for your sense of when you are making any decisions about what you post on LinkedIn or what you write. Some of you won't want to or need to post at all, but certainly you'll need to update your profile. Is always asking yourself, who is this for? Because it is not simply a place where you hang your CV. It is where you are talking to the people you want to find you, whether that's because you're looking for a job or you're looking for clients, whatever it is. So always asking yourself, as you write something, who needs to know this? So always ask yourself, who am I trying to reach now? Because it might well not be the kind of people you were trying to reach with your existing or your previous LinkedIn profile. What do these people who I want to reach need to know or to see or understand about me? What will make me credible? What might they be concerned about? What are the barriers they might have to seeing me now as somebody who works in kind of pharmaceuticals, where they thought I worked in dog training? There we are, I'm coming up to dog training again. And importantly, how much, if at all, does your new audience care or need to know about your shift? I know we've been talking about some people you're going to want to take with you. Some people you can just be like, do you know what? I don't give a toss. It doesn't matter that I used to do this. It's neither here nor there. I just relaunch myself and that's fine. But I think it's really important to always, every time you make a change on LinkedIn, be thinking about who needs to see this. I say this because what tends to happen is your mindset is always totally different. you're thinking, what will Sarah in accounts at my old firm think about what I post? It's like, forget Sarah. I mean, I know I'm being flippant. I know we're often carrying a lot of a sense of our identity, and this is scary doing something new. But really, we're so often so focused on what other people think. It's like, it doesn't matter what Sarah thinks. She's not the person that you want to take on to design her website. She doesn't even have a website. So why does it matter that you're a website designer? Forget about her. She doesn't matter. I think really kind of challenging your mindset about what unhelpful thoughts or assumptions you're carrying. What do people think? They'll think I'm really weird. They'll think, oh, she didn't do any art. Why is she a graphic designer? I have to say, they won't think any of those things. They're thinking about their own stuff. But I think we really need to let go of that. So I think you have to be bold and a little bit brave sometimes and think, actually, I'm not talking to Sarah anymore. I'm not talking to the person I used to sit next to in my office. I'm talking to these brilliant people who I want me to take me on in this new role. So some thoughts. This I'm going to whiz through really quickly because I think this is more obvious. There's lots about it in my course if you want. But I think realizing as well, if you're making quite a big switch, you can sort of rebrand yourself a little bit as well. Think about your headshot. You know, if you're trying to become some really kind of funky social media person now, you used to be a lawyer and there's a picture of you looking really uptight, like serious in a black suit. Like maybe you could change your headshot. Again, this can be done quite covertly, just to kind of get you more into the zone of where you're heading without having to say to people you're doing stuff. You know, you even get people eventually when you're very overt, you can do what it says on the tin. You know, we've got a chef down the bottom, we've got a photographer, I think the guy in the middle does kind of outdoor pursuit stuff. So are you giving the right messaging? Similarly, your banner photo. If your banner photo, for some people, it's very much corporate. It might be like, I work at Sainsbury's and I've got a Sainsbury's banner, or it might be HSBC and it's a picture of the headquarters. You change that. Even if you're not ready, or HSBC would be quite interested to know you're planning to leave, it doesn't mean that you have to put something in saying I'm now going to become a forest ranger, but you could at least take down the HSBC and put something else in that's just a nice generic shot of nature or whatever it might be. Yeah, so thinking about starting to tell a different message with your banner photo. If you, by the way, shame on you if you, who still has the horrible, what I call the grey swirls of death? Yes, yes, you know what I mean. Get rid of those. The default picture of the banner is a sort of grey swirl thing. It says, I have no personality, I haven't been here on LinkedIn for a long time. No offense. Is that fair? Yeah? No, that's all free. So think about what you want to say with your banner photo. Again, I won't dwell on this, you can work. But you know, when you're communicating in your about section, are you getting the right kind of language, the right feel for what you do now? It used to be that everybody's about section on LinkedIn was very corporate. You know, it felt like this is a very professional space. Actually, now it has a personality you can have on LinkedIn. You're new. So you can start in your about section to really kind of show some personality. And it can really be fantastic. Am I running out of time massively? Am I? I was thinking I was working on podcast. Have I already? I thought I was finished at 12.
You're eating into your Q&A.
I'm eating my Q&A. Okay. Yeah, talk to me after. Sorry, I was thinking of half past. I normally do an hour. Okay, so there's lots of stuff about brand feel and language, making sure you get your skills up to date, looking at sort of things like job descriptions so you can update your skills. Don't worry about that. Updating your experience section so that it is relevant, putting everything through the filter of your new world. I'm going to put this, don't worry about that one. This is a nice one. I'll leave that up. So, yes, and getting recommendations, for example, that speak to your new world. What else do I need to tell you? I'm going to move to, sorry, I'm so sorry. That's what happens when you don't time stuff. Oh, I've got a whole load of stuff on your head, like, oh, I've got so much good stuff. This was not a ploy, by the way. Oh, I couldn't do any of it, so you have to buy my course. But if you are interested, it's an online course, it's a set of modules, which is all self-paced. It's normally £99 for folks who are attending today. If you use the code REWORKLIVE, it's £50. So you can do it in your own time. It's lots of videos. It's me talking, but being slightly less mad and not remembering anyone's jobs. And lots of examples, lots of cheat sheets and templates and things like that. Sorry, this wasn't meant to be a hard sell, but I just want to leave that out. So we've got like 5 minutes for questions. Yeah, 20 past. Okay, Kate's looking at me like really serious. Who has a question? And of course, I can stay on after when we leave the room. I'm more than happy because I've totally mapped up my timing. Yes, gentleman with the glasses. You have to wait for your microphone, by the way. Thank you.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks. That was great. Very quickly then, on one of your early slides, you said LinkedIn has a mini website. I went on a course a few months ago where someone turned around and said, no one in the future will actually need their own websites. because actually pipelines and funnels go straight to their email or LinkedIn or whatever. Do you have a view on, I mean, can LinkedIn replace a full Google consulting website?
That's a really good question, and how interesting. Thank you for that reflection. I would say quite possibly yes. I mean, I don't know enough about how the algorithms work, but I'm certainly hearing the same thing, that Google is kind of panicking a bit, in that most of Google now comes through AI, and so that they're not searching the internet as a whole, but they're able to take you more immediately to things like LinkedIn. So I think there's a good case for that. And I certainly know, and I speak mostly as someone who works in learning and development and coaching, that I know plenty of people who manage to work with no website because it all goes through LinkedIn. You have to shape your LinkedIn profile in quite a particular way. You've got to make sure people know how to contact you. You've got to be able to list your services. You might use the featured section so people can download a kind of brochure of your services. So for people who are self-employed, running a business, I would say it would be really interesting to monitor, because I think the way that AI is coming in is certainly meaning that the way that search algorithms work is totally different. But yeah, thank you. Yes, lady. Oh, the mic is coming your way.
It's quite harsh when you've amassed lots of previous jobs to really not your well. And I'd quite like to call. Is that something that's recommended?
Yes, I do have a slide. I think I've got something. I must have it from another talk I've done. You can disconnect from people. You can sort of unconnect, with what they call it, sort of physically delete people, and they don't know. So that's the first thing to say. A bit like, nobody, they don't get notification. I guess it depends what your reason is. If you're just having a tidy up, then maybe the risk is if you cull a lot of people, you lose the magical 500 plus connections, which kind of rightly or wrongly gives you a certain amount of credibility, so you don't have like, I have 102 connections, so people feel. But and as I said, there are other ways to train the algorithm. So if the other reason is I don't want to see a lot of stuff about my old world, there are probably easier ways of doing it. Because if you've got loads and loads of connections, it could take quite a lot of time to start telling people. So I'd suggest it's probably more about starting to let the algorithm know what you do want and not being tempted. I think the problem is when you've got mates and they post and you comment on their post about how they've got a lovely new job in the world of sales. It starts thinking, oh, this person loves sales, and it's not sending you to sales stuff, but I wanted to say I like what my friends do. So have a play. You can certainly do it. It's a question of time and energy, and whether it kind of serves what you're trying to achieve. Anybody else? We've probably got this lady here. 2 minutes. Okay, I'll take one more after this, probably. Depends if your question is.
Yeah. Wondering about timing. I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile for ages. Do you kind of do it in stages?
That's a brilliant question. Yeah, I think it's sort of what you feel works for you, partly because I would never want to say to someone you must go on to LinkedIn, because sometimes people tie themselves in knots because they don't have the clarity. They think I'll update my LinkedIn and they're like, what am I trying to say? So I think if it feels like it's almost like it's going to mess with your mind, then don't worry about it. If you're someone who just thinks actually it'd be quite useful for me as someone who hasn't used LinkedIn for a while, just go in and have a tinker. You could simply go in and just update it so that it's all quite clean. You've got a nice generic photo, you've got a nice up-to-date photo, all your experience is kind of in order, and just have a little play with it. Or maybe put in certain things if you think, actually, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, but I am doing that quite interesting volunteering course around, working with children, or I have got that qualification in food hygiene. Maybe I'll put that in just because it's sort of, so I think there's no right or wrong answer. It's kind of what feels right. Some people like wait till they've got all their ducks in a row and do that sort of final relaunch because it just messes with their brain to try and figure out who they are before that. But I would say maybe go and have a play and allow yourself to change a few bits, but don't let it stop you or worry you that you're like, I don't know who I am. Yeah. I want, no, not one. One more.
What do you do if you've got sort of more than one thing that you're exploring, or even if you want to have 3 sort of completely different strands to your future work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll split that into 2 points. I think if you're exploring lots of different things, you can probably do that. I know but it's like if you were a portfolio person. Yes. Yeah. This is a question I get asked so much, and it's true for me. And you can tie yourself in knots. And the lady here earlier was saying, "Can I have 2 LinkedIn profiles?" I'm like, no, you can't. Is the short answer. And even if you could, I probably wouldn't try it because you'd go insane. I mean, it's hard enough trying to manage one. I think it comes back to various things. It's sort of Ben earlier when we were talking about portfolio careers. I don't know if anyone was in that session. He does various different things. Sometimes you can almost pick and go, actually, who is the audience I'm trying to communicate with here on LinkedIn? And the reason I'm on LinkedIn is I want people to find me because I'm a consultant in setting up your own business. That's the only message they need. So the fact that in my spare time I teach art is neither here nor there. So let's just leave that out. So sometimes you can almost think, what am I here for? Who am I trying to reach? Can I sort of pare this down to and actually all my art stuff is going on Instagram. And on Instagram, they won't give two hoots whether I consult on setting up small businesses. They just want to buy my lovely pictures. That's one thing. If you think, well, actually all my folks are on LinkedIn, but I do different things for them, I think it's just about fine tuning that message. I think one of the things can be about finding your golden thread. I was talking with a friend yesterday who is a very successful speaker, and she does a lot about the future of work. She's in researcher, and she said to me yesterday, I found my thing, because she does both. She said, I don't think she'll mind me saying, she said it's all about trends and trend forecasting. She said sometimes she goes and delivers talks about productivity, sometimes she talks to people about AI, sometimes she talks about hybrid working, and she was tying herself in knots going, but what do I talk about? You know, because sometimes I'm talking about AI and other times, how does this fit together? So actually I realized that my thing is I'm all about trends. Or maybe for me, as somebody who does stuff like this, but I also facilitate, I also do training on public speaking. So for me, there's some common thread, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's about sort of communication and impact and presence. And I can just, if I'm careful with that, I can kind of make them all sit under that umbrella. So if you can find a theme, but other times maybe you just have to kind of embrace the fact that you do two things. And some people do on their LinkedIn say things like, you know, not I'm a hot mess and I do these two things, but they almost make a joke. If your audience don't care, you almost say, you know, Mondays to Wednesdays I do this, and on Thursdays, Saturdays you'll find me doing that. If you're interested in this, here's how I can help you. If you're interested in that, here's how I can help you. Drop me a line, let's have a conversation. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.